Assalamualaikum, ma'am.
Walaikum assalam.
Can I go right now? Can I present?
Uh, yes, you sure can.
So I will be talking about misogyny and philogyny, and how women are hypersexualized and regarded as lesser beings than men, even in the films where they play the lead roles. They have to endure overgeneralized and harsh stereotypes. So, since the beginning of times, films have been used as a means to visually present imaginations and ideas. The story, plot, character, etc. All of these tend to have a great impact on not just the current ongoing trends, but also the gender stereotypes on basically audience of all ages. The types of movies made before versus now are very different. During the earlier times, gender roles and stereotypes were taken seriously, and the scripts were written accordingly. Female roles were shown as hypersexualized characters who were supposed to be submissive, whereas male roles were mostly supposed to be masculine and aggressive when dominating. Recently, however, female characters have started to present dominant roles in films. But one thing that cannot be denied is that the constant need for filmmakers to promote rape culture, objectify the female characters, and present them as sexualized objects and belittle the female characters. When it comes to rape or sexualization of a female character, the woman is usually blamed for being the one who provoked rather than the man who is the perpetrator. Reasons such as clothes were too revealing or unreasonable hours, modernity, etc., are given to justify the crime. The topics that are mostly deemed taboo or not talked about enough are always the woman's fault. For example, rape and the objectifying of women. This has also been continuously reinforced by the media. The stereotype have been applied to a majority of the movies and dramas produced in not just one industry, but almost all of them, be it Hollywood, Bollywood, or Lollywood. Due to this, the culture of promoting certain stereotypes never stopped. Now, if a movie about a female lead role does come out, which does not follow the protocols of being a woman, it is hardly ever given the limelight it deserves. So, the film that I think that should have been discussed about more is the Mardani series. Uh, Mardani 1 was released in 2014. It was an action thriller movie. Uh, and the meaning of this word was commonly known as like a man, but in this movie, it represented a brave lady. In this film, Rani Mukherjee plays Shivani Shivaji Roy, which is the lead role of a police officer who is determined to find the mafia behind child human trafficking. This movie was such a success that the production house decided to make this a series, after which Mardani 2 was released in 2019, directed and written both by Gopi Putran. The lead role were Rani Mukherjee and Vishal Jitwa, and the production company was Yash Raj Films. And Rani Mukherjee in this, being the lead role, plays a policewoman again, Shivani Shivaji Roy. Um, in this movie, Sunny is a 21-year-old boy who brutally rapes and murders a young woman. Shivani is keen on finding the perpetrator who kidnapped, raped, and killed a young girl from the festival. She manages to find a witness who can help her identify this man. However, Sunny beats her to it and murders the witness as well when Shivani is just about to get all the information she needs. She then gives herself just 48 hours with her team to locate him and get justice. Meanwhile, Sunny gets desperate to somehow get out of the city for a while, and one of his plans include abducting another strong female character who is running for elections and using her as bait to negotiate and find his way out. Um, Shivani, during all of this, gets all the media's attention, including a misogynistic reporter, Amit Sharma. On the day of Diwali, Shivani and her team finally manage to track him down, but they split up and locate his exact location. Shivani then finally gets to his hiding location and saves the politician as well as another young girl he had kept hostage. They then take turns beating him up with the same belt that he murders all his victims from. So this one particular scene, the specific scene, is a perfect example of how working women have to face misogynistic people throughout their career. Even if the position is of the higher level, the people working with her just do not stop making the meaning comments. This scene is a correct representation of what people reaction is towards the victims of rape. Um, Shivani basically arrives at a crime scene where the other police officer are already waiting. They're all male. One of the officers is DSP Bridge Shekhawat. And while Shivani does her own investigation, Shekhawat can be seen standing on the side with another officer, and they can be seen having this conversation. जहाँ पे he says, देखो क्या ड्रामा लगा रखा है, लेडीज लोगों का यही प्रॉब्लम होता है, काम कम, काम करने की एक्टिंग ज़्यादा. And then another officer says, अरे एक तो लेडीज ऊपर से जात की भी. And Shekhawat says, अरे यहाँ हम सब पता लगा कर बैठे हैं, ये बेकार का टाइम बर्बाद कर रही है. As in कि they don't really think that she's doing her job well, and that it's really not up to the mark, and they've already done everything that needs to be done. 1 second, give me a minute. And then in the same scene, Shekhawat then proceeds to talk to Shivani about the fact that he has arrested the victim's boyfriend already, who she was last seen with. To which Shivani replies that the boyfriend is not at fault because there are some technical issues जहाँ पे आपने like जहाँ पे उसने सही से investigation नहीं की थी, like he was a right-handed person and the criminal was a left-handed person, which evidence clearly shows. And they talk about how the girl's ankle is tied on the rope on the girl's ankle is tied on the left side, which clearly shows that the criminal was left-handed. And then Shekhawat says, मैडम इन निशानियों के बारे में तो बता रहा हूँ मैं आपको, ये हेट क्राइम है. मर्द की जब ईगो हर्ट होती है तो वो किसी भी हद तक जा सकता है, ऊपर से ही ऐसी छोरियाँ. And Shivani cuts him off and says, ऐसी छोरियाँ. And Shekhawat says, ये जो मॉडर्न टाइप की छोरियाँ होती हैं मैडम, एक बॉयफ्रेंड से काम चलता है इनका, और जब इस तरह के शौक पालती है तो ऊंच नीच तो होगी. This scene I found to be particularly very misogynistic, and victim blaming इसमें properly depict की गई है. A movie review in terms of misogyny, victim blaming, and sexualization, and working girls. Basically, there are many scenes in this movie which reflect how society generally treats women, working women in particular, and victims of abuse. This includes the use of gender stereotypes as well. It also shows how women are an easy target for not just men, but boys even as young as 21-year-olds. Several comments about how Shivani is trying to be a man, or if there was a man instead of Shivani, the rest of the abductions and murders would not have happened because Shivani, being a woman, provoked the perpetrator. Shekhawat is also shown as a misogynist and claims that he can get Shivani transferred whenever he pleases and can take her job easily. Plus, during the interviews, one of the person who knew the victim explains how the girl was muh fat, which is straightforward and bold, and that she should have been more careful. Other than this, one of the news reporter refers to Shivani as beautiful and dashing rather than applauding her for the job she's doing, and compares her with men. Sunny, who is the criminal, can be seen throughout the movie talking to the camera in a monologue form and making extremely misogynistic comments about women. During the ending, one of his dialogues even include, जिस दिन औरत मर्यादा छोड़ देती है उस दिन सारा समाज का विनाश हो जाता है, and तुम सारी औरतों की जात ही हराम है. In conclusion, although the movie represents strong women fighting against the harshest of crimes, no matter how well she portrays, questions against her characters and her ability always arise. This is because of the stereotypes that have existed for a long period of time, and how the media reinforces it in majority of the movies. Due to which many of the movies where women do play the lead role, and not just the supporting sexualized objects, they still add comments and scenes where they are mistreated both verbally and physically. That, however, is just a clear representation of the society that we live in, be it Hollywood, Bollywood, or Lollywood. And I would like to end this presentation with a quote from Maria Maroon, where she says, although women's lived experiences under misogyny are by no means universal, the global rampancy of patriarchal society and institutional system under which women face gender-based hostility is ubiquitous. Sorry. Systematic misogyny and power inequities are at the root of sexual assault, harassment, and male-on-female bullying, as well as the countless less conspicuous but no less violent practices across the globe. Thank you.
Thank you. Please stay on the last slide.
Oh yeah, sure. This one?
Last second. Uh, comments? Comments on any part of the presentation? Komal? G? Anyone? जी मिनाहिल कोई कमेंट है एनी कमेंट
Miss, I overall like the presentation. Um, yeah, मैंने ये मूवी देखी भी नहीं है, but लग बहुत sexist रही है, like काफी ज़्यादा, और yeah.
ओके ऑल राइट जो इसने कहा जरीश ने डू यू एग्री विद हर पॉइंट्स डू यू फाइंड द फिल्म मिसोजिनिस्टिक do you agree with the connection she made between Maria Maron's comment and the content of the film?
Yes, Miss, I agree with what she said.
Okay.
And what she made.
All right. Uh, okay. Okay, Zarish. Uh, I would like you to explain the connection between any scene of the film or the scenes that you selected and Maria Maron's comment where she says that institutional system uh, has something to do with the misogyny. See right here. So
Yeah, now
do you see any system, any institution within the film?
yes, the I basically see an entire police department, which is an institution which is against the female working police officers to get to the top level. You know, as in Shivani is a very, very strong character in this movie, and she should have been at the top. But because of this being a patriarchal society and the police being controlled by men, they don't let her get to the top. They actually transfer her to another area so that she doesn't get in the way of the things that the investigations that are that are taking place.
Okay. So you also notice power inequity within that system?
Um, yes, I did notice it. Even though what I did like about this movie is that Shivani is the kind of character who does not take like anything other than being straightforward. She doesn't take. I'm sorry for this. I don't know if I should use this word. She doesn't take shit from people. I'm so sorry if I'm using this
No, no,
word.
no.
And
That's okay. Okay. So जी
I think she basically even जब इसका transfer हो जाता है शिवानी का to another department, she then gives herself 48 hours to locate the criminal because she says कि even if I've been transferred, I'm gonna do this job straight.
okay. And what about the last part, like sexual assault, harassment, and male on male bullying?
Me,
You're saying there is some sort of institutional uh, bullying, male bullying
yeah,
that targets
yes,
actually Shivani while
definitely.
she's
On several scenes, like I said, Shikawat, the misogynistic character, and many other characters in this movie can be seen bullying Shivani with her words, basically comparing her to men and saying कि आप अगर मर्द होती तो शायद ये ना होता. And obviously there's harassment as well in this movie and murder भी होता है of the female characters. सो
okay.
उसमें एक सीन ये भी होता है जिसमें वो वुमेन के कैरेक्टर पे कहते हैं कि वो उसने चीट कर दिया था सो मैंने उसको उड़ा दिया लाइक मतलब शी आई किल्ड माय वाइफ बिकॉज़ शी चीटेड ऑन मी.
Okay, so was that the same killer who was saying this or another character?
नहीं, this scene basically the criminal is shown as a psychopath और वो one of the male officers की घर जाता है और उसकी wife को abduct करके portray ऐसा करते हैं कि the police officer is making a video कि my wife cheated on me, so मैंने उसको murder कर दिया along with the killer, along with the person that she cheated on me with, and now I'm committing suicide. But he just wanted to say कि मैंने क्योंकि मेरी wife ने cheat किया तो मैंने उसका murder कर दिया.
Okay, so basically this film Mardani is showing sexual assault, harassment and male on female bullying of not only the protagonist but also those women who are killed.
Yes,
in the series. Okay, good, very nice. Okay, so is there a way to connect this whole scenario within the film to reality outside?
Yes, I think this person being a criminal aside, most of the female who actually go through such things, they are victim blamed all the time. I can even relate it personally. I can relate it to my people around me. Okay, when something bad does happen, for example, sexual assault, abuse, the female are usually वो उनको दबाया जाता है और उनको बताया जाता है कि आप चुप रहो, आप ना करो, and just take it whatever the men give you.
Okay, was this film based on a real story?
This film was not based on a real story. The events in this movie was somewhat real, जैसे कि abduct किया जाता है और kidnap किया जाता है, murder किया जाता है. But this movie itself was not based on a real story.
So there are events, abduction events and murder events of women. That can be that somehow the film represents. Okay, I do not remember the dates exactly, but I think there were some serial killers, at least in America, who were after women. I think it happened perhaps a couple of decades ago.
It still happens to this day, ma'am. Not in just America. अभी भी you can see last days में एक छोटी सी बच्ची की abduction की news आई थी, and then she was raped and then she was killed.
You're talking about Zainab?
No, Zainab के बाद भी, जिसकी वजह से Zainab के केस को बार-बार connect किया जाता है, and उसके बाद भी इतने ज़्यादा events हुए हैं with little girls being abducted.
Okay, all right. Okay, anything else?
Did you like my presentation, ma'am?
Yes, I liked your presentation, and that's why I'm asking you more questions about the connection between theory and film, because I thought your last paragraph or last statement was definitely connected to what was happening in the film, and I really liked it that you picked up dialogues from the film to explain the misogyny side, so I think that those connections were very well made.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I wanted to add a lot of scenes even in my paper, but I was reaching a certain limit, so I just kept it short. And even in the presentation, I wanted to explain it very thoroughly, so I basically decided to pick the scene that would maybe just cover up the entire thing and then conclude it with a lot of other information from the movie.
Okay. I think perhaps Myra wants to add something. Myra, you can turn on your mic.
No, miss, I just generally commented when you wrote about the USA serial killers that more recent accounts are the Ted Bundy and Charles Mason cases against Sharon Tate. And they were even refigured in films recently. To a certain extent, they're also glorified.
Okay. So if you end up writing your final paper on the same topic, and if you end up comparing the two films in your final paper, do think about this case which Myra just mentioned. So your paper will remain on the same topic, but somewhere in the paper you can make a connection between the incidents, and if you can find local incidents uh, they would be best. For example, if the film is from India, it's an Indian film, I suppose. So you can
Yes.
also think about, like similar cases in India, and India and Pakistan being similar in many ways. You can make local connections as well, because you would be looking at everything from your position. So Pakistani connection will be useful too, and the American will become part of literature reviewed for
So,
this.
ma'am, I shouldn't change my topic. I should just continue on this one.
If you like, you can continue on this one because you have included a 2019 film in the discussion. So if you are comparing Mardani 2 with Mardani 1, that sounds great. Okay,
ठीक है.
and do use. I think I uploaded a few different papers on misogyny in Google Classroom. They are by Yvonne Tasker and many other authors. So try looking at those things and get something from there for discussion as well.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, okay, very
Yeah.
nice. Thank you, thank you. G, who would like to go next? Any other comment by anyone before we move on to next presentation? Okay, I suppose nobody wants to comment. Gee, uh, who wants
Yes,
to
ma'am.
go next?
Yes. Miss, if no one else wants to go first, I can go.
Okay, I think you should share your presentation.
Okay, so my presentation's focus will be on the prejudiced, stereotypical, and misogynistic images of women that are represented in Pakistani dramas. The drama serial that I will be using as a reference is Mere Paas Tum Ho. And the specific matter that I will be stressing upon is how women are penalized and shown in a very negative light for the same actions that men are forgiven for. Pakistan's media capitalizes and uses these stereotypical images and uses them for their own interest. These themes are overused to the extent that our audience enjoys prejudice against women. So, the scene that I will be sharing is from the last episode of Mere Paas Tum Ho, and I think that scene basically summarizes the crux of my presentation. So I'll just share another screen. जी मिस आपको स्क्रीन नजर आ रही है अभी ये
जी जी नजर
यूट्यूब
आ रही है जी आप इसको ऑडियो शेयर करें ना पहले वरना सुनाई नहीं देगा सारों को
ओ अच्छा
हाँ
ऑडियो कैसे
अनशेयर करें
अच्छा
स्टॉप शेयरिंग go to
अच्छा
sharing again, share screen again.
शेयर
uh,
स्क्रीन अगेन
you will see share sound on the bottom left corner.
जी मिस नजर आ रही है ठीक
Click it and then share.
ओके थैंक यू ठीक है so this is the scene I will be miss बस ये एच है so I will be sharing the slides again. जी मिस आपको स्लाइड्स नजर आ रही है मेरी
Gee, I can see the slides while discussing this
Okay.
point onwards. Uh,
जी
try making a connection between the dialogues and whatever you are saying.
Yes, miss, I will. Okay, so basically, I think a lot of us know what this TV show is about, but I will summarize it thoda sa. So this TV show basically depicts a story of a couple in which Mavish, the woman, betrays her husband Danish by having an affair with another man, and she eventually leaves her husband and her child and lives eventually, starts living with the man she was having
Okay.
an affair with.
So what is the name of the other person?
Shehwar.
Okay. So in this scene, I think we were looking at Shehwar and his wife, right? And
Yes.
the discussion is about Mavish and Danish and their son Rumi. So
Yes.
uh, I think most of the students may be familiar with the summary of the story. If you still want to summarize it in 3-4 lines maximum, and focus on the dialogues between Shehwar and his wife in this scene.
Yes. So I just summarized it. Mavish basically cheats on her kind of cheats on her husband. She leaves her husband for this man. She divorces Danish, and goes to live with this man Shehwar, who
Yes,
was
this is precisely what Shehwar's wife is referring to. She's saying, you destroyed Danish and Rumi and Mavish. So
yes,
she's referring to the three people. Okay?
yes. Yes. So the criticism that I have with this show, like first with this scene, वैसे तो, is that it's kind of hypocritical and ironic that these words are coming from a man who basically performed pretty much the same actions as Mavish did. He also was greedy, like she was shown, for wealth. He built his career using her wife's money, and secondly, he also cheats on her wife and ruins his marriage. The way he mentions ऐसी औरत is that basically shows how he is looking down upon Mavish for his actions. He is disgusted by what Mavish did by cheating on her husband and leaving her child, and the only way he is justifying his actions is that he did not have a child, and that's why he didn't ruin much. And but in fact he did ruin a lot of it. He did encourage Mavish to cheat on her husband, and he also cheated on his own wife. And so basically this dialogue, Shehwar's dialogue, is used as to summarize the point of this whole TV show, which was to show how such women are there, and they can do anything, they can go to any extent to gain wealth, and be it cheating on their husband or leaving their child. And the criticism that I have with this overall show is how Shehwar's character is never looked down upon as heavily as Mavish's character is looked down upon. And I just explained how he is no different from Mavish's character. And in fact, he might be more malicious because he always had purpose behind his actions, of which was to steal Mavish or to encourage her to cheat on her husband. However, the person who got to be humiliated in front of the larger audience was Mavish. Mavish's character was looked down upon by everyone. She was put under the microscope for cheating on her husband. And even though Shehwar's character wasn't that much praised either, but the whole show was based on how Mavish, the female lead character, cheats on her husband. And there were basically no one called out Shehwar for his actions. Women's infidelity is put under the microscope and scrutinized more than a man's infidelity is. The man is usually forgiven or let go. Like in this scene, there was the conversation between Shehwar and his wife, his ex-wife, was very civilized, and she also in a very civilized manner explains her hurt and how she might not be able to forgive him, but she might be able to give him a job back in her company. So that basically shows that this show and the storyline or the writer was not hard on Shehwar's character at all. And yes, so I will be giving example of two other TV shows to explain my point of view, which is that women are penalized more than men for the same actions. Um,
That was very good.
okay, so before I give the examples, I will elaborate on the themes as well. Okay, so there's also the good woman and bad women binary that writer basically shows in this TV show. Hania's character is used in comparison to Mavish. Hania repeatedly used dialogue such as महविश कैसे एक अच्छी औरत हो सकती है जो अपनी औलाद की फिक्र ना करे, ऐसी औरत है भी, मतलब ऐसी औरत भी कैसे हो सकती है जो अच्छी माँ ना हो, which basically shows how women are seen as complete when they are good mothers, and women are constantly attached to their motherhood, and they and they're bad basically if they take any action that is against their motherhood. So that really basically that binary is really reinforced in this TV show. And Hania's character basically, so in the paper, in the representations of cinema film, I read this concept of Chui Mui girl, the modest and submissive girl, which Hania's character is supposedly basically portraying. And Mehwish's character is her infidelity and her greediness is basically shown to be the unmodest woman in Pakistan society. So I think that these binaries are usually reinforced in drama serials that portrays women in a bad light. And also the Madonna whore dichotomy basically, that a woman who is completely, a woman is shown in a completely negative light who goes for greediness and who goes for wealth, and she is slut shamed for her actions, as Mehwish is also is. And even her objectification, like the way she is portrayed, that she is beautiful, and her objectification in this drama serial, and she is basically she's in her late 20s or late 30s, and she is shown to be very beautiful, and that every man is, even her neighbor, he is shown to like flirt with her repeatedly. And once he sees that Mehwish cheated on her husband, he basically backs off in the later episodes. सो उसकी जो खूबसूरती है जो दिखाई जाती है वो भी काफ़ी उसको ऑब्जेक्टिफाई करती है कि एक खूबसूरत औरत है, वो अपने वो पैसों की पीछे भागती है, एंड मैन आर जस्ट चेजिंग हर. एंड उसकी जो ऑब्जेक्टिफिकेशन है उसके आगे भी बेसिकली इट शोन हाउ माहम, शहवाज वाइफ, शी यूजेस दिस डायलॉग: तुम इतनी खूबसूरत हो कि मुझे तुम पे रश्क आता है, और तुम कितनी बदसूरत हो कि तुम्हारे ऊपर थूकने का दिल करता है. So I think this dialogue basically explains a lot how her beauty is objectified in this drama serial. Furthermore, the dialogue "Do Take Ki Aurat," this dialogue was specifically used against Mehwish, and he uses her words to the currency of Bangladesh, basically the takai. So उसकी इधर she was reduced to a pennyworth, and which I think इस तरह की disrespect was never given to शहवार. अगर हम ये parallel basically सामने रखें कि शहवार ने वही किया था जो Mehwish ने किया था, लेकिन he was never degraded this way, the way Mehwish was. So later on, so I think another point that is important to put across is how this drama serial and this storyline sells a lot in Pakistan, because that's how Pakistani mindsets are cemented. There is respect for veiled women who cover their heads and who cover themselves. There is, like, I'm not क्या कहते हैं, disrespecting the concept of hijab as well at all, लेकिन there is basically more respect for them, and there is humiliation and lack of respect for those who refuse to cover themselves. And Pakistani society में जहाँ पे the culture that is dominant over here, it basically shuns on women's infidelity more, and man's infidelity is just put under the rugs. And I think Deborah Mason's like her comment in one of the abstracts I read, that she in her book, in one of the chapters in her book, she mentioned how media is used to spread and enforce religious-based misogyny against women, which I think is relevant here, because most of the drama serials are based on women, and how their purity and their piousness is so relevant to marriage, and men's actions are never they're never stressed upon. So I will be giving two short examples of drama serials which followed the very similar storylines, very similar themes. One there is घर तितली का पर. इसमें भी काफ़ी similar storyline है कि there is a couple, Azin and Shafaq. Azir cheats on Shafaq with another woman called Anjum, And eventually it is shown that Azir is forgiven. He realizes his mistake when he gets to know that his wife is having a child. Shafak agrees to work on their marriage, and they are shown to have a happy marriage with their children and everything. But before that, before she forgives him, Azir asks asks his wife to leave. वो उसको घर से निकाल देता है because he is having an affair with Anjum, and Anjum, his mistress, is portrayed in such way कि वो आज़र को अपने जाल में फंसा लेती है, a married man, and she is the only reason for the failure of their marriage. Basically, अंजुम जो औरत है उसकी ही गलती थी क्योंकि वो आज़र को अपने जाल में फंसा लेती है. And in the end, while Azir and Shafak have a happy marriage and a happy ending, Anjum is shown to be roaming around the streets, and she is rejected from her previous marriage and her children. उसके बच्चे उसको देखना तक मतलब बर्दाश्त नहीं करते, and she is just roaming around the streets, homeless, with no support system at all. So the problem that I have with this storyline is that how the woman Anjum is portrayed in this drama serial. Azir was a married man, and he is shown have no accountability for his actions. Anjum is portrayed in a completely negative light, that she is the only reason for ruining Azir and Shafak's marriage. And there's always an escape for the man. There's always a way where he can amend his actions, where he can make up for his actions, while the woman isn't. She's never given that leeway, and she's never given that that benefit of doubt कि ठीक है उसने भी गलती कर दी है, and she can be forgiven as well. And इस शो के एंड पे भी आप देखते हैं किस तरह के अंजुम को सिर्फ गलती पे रखा जाता है कि अंजुम की गलती थी कि उसने एक शादीशुदा मर्द को अपने जाल में फंसा लिया. So
Noor,
yes.
I think you have to wind it up because we have 5 more presentations, and we'll be short of time. So I think you have basically made all your points, and you have made excellent theoretical connections. So I would suggest that try winding it up, right?
I'll just skip the second example. I think you can read that in my paper. So
Well, I think, yes, I will read that in your paper. You can briefly say that Jhuti also made similar connections, and I think that would make sense.
Yes, so Jhuti also made similar connections, how like there are basically a man and a woman. A woman is penalized for her actions for stealing from people, but the man who also does the same things, he is not. So these examples basically prove the prejudice and bias that is prevalent in our media, and how female characters are cornered and ridiculed for their actions. And our media is rooted in misogyny and sexism, and these are just 2 examples, but there are several other examples that proves these themes, and how our plot lines sell based on women's क्या कहते हैं degradation. So yeah, that's it.
G, comments? Any comments?
Miss, I think she has very well covered all the points that were needed to discuss taking the Pakistani dramas and everything. Very well.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Gigi. Okay. So that was very nice, Noor. I think very well done. The only thing that I would say that you mentioned couple of times, that was Shehbaz was not punished the way Mehwish is punished or treated, right? Mehwish is not jailed in the play. Well, whereas Shehbar ends up in jail, and I think, Ji.
नहीं नहीं मैं sorry I interrupted you, sorry आप
Gigi, please. I think you understood what I was trying to say, so you can respond.
Yes, miss, you're right. But the reason why Shehwar was jailed was because I think it was because he was misusing his wife's wealth. Like it belonged to her. तो उसने उसको काफी थोड़ा सा गलत इस्तेमाल किया because he
All
can't
right.
possibly find jail for cheating
Okay,
on.
so you are saying he is not punished for infidelity, and
Yes,
nobody mistreats him for his infidelity. Okay,
definitely. Obviously, his wife asks him to leave his house, and that's मतलब वो तो होना भी चाहिए. लेकिन ये ड्रामे की पूरी जो स्टोरी लाइन थी वो मैविश की हरकतों पे बेस्ड थी. इवन जो झूठी ड्रामा है उसका टाइटल ही था झूठी. वो औरत को बेसिकली झूठी बुलाया हुआ था और उसमें मर्द भी झूठा दिखाया गया हुआ है. लेकिन जो स्टोरी लाइंस जो फोकस करती है ना वो सिर्फ औरतों पे करती हैं और उनकी उनकी हरकतों पे फोकस करती हैं.
right. Okay, so the title has a lot of significance, and perhaps there were 26 or 30 plus episodes of the serial, and for that much duration, the woman was called Chuti, and the man was not given any such title. Right. Okay. So you mentioned the Madonna and whore connection. So if there's a book in Google Classroom, I think the title probably is Beauty and Misogyny. And
Yes.
I wonder if it was Jeffrey, one of the authors in that book. Jeffrey, you would find an article with Jeffrey's name in Google Classroom, and I think she says Madonna brought brothel into pop culture, which means that Madonna normalized brothel, because brothel is something which is uh, looked down upon, and people actually use it as a negative connotation. But Madonna actually brought this kind of culture to pop culture, and she normalized it in many ways. So do you think that Mere Paas Tum Ho also brought Mehwish to mainstream? She was already there in cinema, but as a side, like supporting character. Such women were there in the films of the past, but as supporting characters, while Mehwish was the protagonist. So, by giving this role to the protagonist, actually, the film also normalized. Uh, though she is negatively portrayed, but also now a character like this is the protagonist. Uh, at least we have Mere Paas Tum Ho that made such character the protagonist of the play. The play revolves around Mavish and her story and how Danish's family is destroyed. So, do you think that Mere Paas Tum Ho has brought infidelity uh, to mainstream in this manner? It is punishing, but she is also the protagonist in the play.
Yes, most definitely. I think obviously infidelity is prevalent, but I think the way they portrayed infidelity and the way they portrayed Mavis' character is very questionable, of course. But I mean, I think if our industry needs to present diverse characters and they have to present जिस तरह कि आप कह रही हैं कि Madonna brought वो brothel वाला concept, so they should do it obviously, but they should do it more responsibly as to not corner women and not corner females, or if there's any other concept that corners men, then they shouldn't do that either. But definitely I think it different diverse characters लाने चाहिए film industry में, because there's diversity in our storylines, in our industry film. So I think I agree with you that was important, लेकिन the way they did it, which I think that can be questioned काफी ज़्यादा on many grounds.
All right, one last question. Do you think that Heer of Heer Ranjha hated by people of the subcontinent?
Miss, I don't think it was, let's say, hated. Like, I've never heard anyone speaking
Right.
against him.
Okay, I will tell you why I asked that, because I've heard Heer was engaged in infidelity. He had premarital and extramarital relationship with Ranjha, and she ran away with Ranjha, and finally she faced honor killing, right? Uh, Mushtaq Sufi says that here is epitome of love in Punjab, despite her infidelity. And I think you can, when if you're writing your final paper on this, you can think about it. What Mushtaq Sufi means by calling a character like Heer, uh, like he says, their relationship is epitome of love. So it's pretty strange, because Heer has been there for past 700 years, and she is not hated, despite honor killing, despite infidelity. Heer and Ranjha are popular, right? And I think that public at large or people in the subcontinent love these characters, right? So while writing your paper, try analyzing what is happening. Two characters are immensely loved, while Mavish is shown as somebody जो कि 2 टके की औरत है in the play, and even Shehwar, who was in a relationship with her and was trying to marry her. Marriage probably shows his love for the character, but later when his wife puts him in jail, at this stage or probably before and after, he says he will not take any blame for that, and he is using words like इस तरह की औरतें. He was trying to marry इस तरह की औरत जो है, he was trying to marry her. So I think it is kind of complicated. Just try to understand these things or analyze these characters further if you're writing your final on the same one. Okay, thank you. Ji, Myra, are you ready?
Yes, Miss. I just had one problem. I've shared my presentation with you. Is it possible if you could share screen it, since mine doesn't work? My laptop freezes then.
It's okay. I will. I
I've
think I
sent
will.
an email,
Okay.
so it's in
Uh,
that
have you emailed or uploaded?
emailed.
Okay, let me check here. Is this a PDF?
No, but I think if you click the present button, it will start.
Does it say view only? Where is present here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so should I start now?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. So my topic is representation, stereotypes, and issues of honor, particularly with a focus on of religious minority women after 1947 partition and during the late 1970s, during the Ziaul Haq's era when radical Islamization was introduced and state-sponsored zealot and like state-sponsored Islamization was encouraged starting from the rural areas. Next slide, please. So the film I have chosen as my case study, and I've narrowed it down to a scene, but I'll be looking at the film in a whole context as well, is Silent Waters, Khamosh Pani by a Muslim American documentary filmmaker Sabiha Summer. And while I'll also be comparing how this film does not only represent a woman of a certain atmosphere after who has gone through violence during partition, but she is also still currently representative of the social realities that prevail our political landscape in contemporary Pakistan today when it comes to minority women, and how there is a certain consistency present within the two. So to give a brief summary, this Pakistani film is set in 1979 when General Ziaul Haq had placed the country under martial law, and it was beginning to allow legal and education systems to come under the control of Islamic clerics. The film is set in a village in Punjab in which Aisha, a middle-aged widow, is still haunted by the ghosts of partition and soon watches her teenage son succumb to the forces of radical Islam. Her son's name is Salim, and Salim also serves as Aisha's Achilles heel throughout the movie, which will be further explained later. So, as I explained the thesis and argument before, I'll just reiterate how it'll explore the role of women, mainly women from the religious minority, and their representation and any stereotypes present in light of war with the current thematic concerns that will be present. It also aims to explore different perspectives, mainly through a gendered lens and a male violent lens during rape in war, while highlighting the social realities. Now, I will be introducing, in my research paper, I've introduced this framework of the trio, which is a simultaneous relationship the film has with audience, society, and the silver screen, and how throughout it impacts them. But it also serves not only as a translation of visual language to depict what is going on in our current country's climate, as is with Khamosh Pani, but also what has ensued in history. The method of analysis which is used for the scene is a mise-en-scene contextual realism. Semiotic analysis is very heavily focused on in my case study because, as I will tell, it is linked to Aisha's migration as an individual. Ideological sequence, script, theoretical spine work, I'll be using mainly Sadaf Ahmed's um, theory of honor and rape, and the audiovisual case study in light of that. Ma'am, could we go to the next slide, please? So the first few themes I'll be touching upon by the case, by the scene is parceling honor. So we see that Aisha in the beginning of the film and throughout the scene that I've chosen, she has been stereotyped as the devoted woman, but also the mother and the widow. Her life, she teaches Quran classes in the to young village girls, but her life also revolves around her son, Salim. And in light of Basin and Menon, the theorist, they explain the construction that identified her as a woman first and foremost as a member of a religious community. And then they invested with her the full responsibility for upholding community honor denied by her autonomy. We see this because, oh, wait, I'm sorry, I missed my sequence point, so I'll repeat. So before the scene I'll be discussing takes place, the following action of the scene is we are introduced to a montage sequence visualizing Aisha's traumatic past as a young Viru belonging to a Sikh household during partition. And she has lost her brother Jaswant, who during the present day 1979 has sought out his sister 32 years after partition, and by visiting the house where she has lived in both pre and post partition. The only change is the being in her garment or religious identity. As a result of this new information and the hostility which has arisen, there is now hostility between Salim and Aisha because her son has been warped under the radical Islamization movement and has proclaimed himself as a jihadist. And Aisha has suffered as a woman from a Sikh minority. The scene begins with the following action, which is basically having Aisha was reminded of her past through her brother, and the reality of that resurfacing has unearthed her, and the threatening specter is basically destabilizing Aisha's contingent existence in the moment. She is already at loss between being a Muslim and having the past of being once a Sikh woman. And we see this throughout the scene when she has both a copy of the Quran as well as her Sikh scripture. So the what we see is a certain level of male dominance which is seen through Aisha's son Salim, because the constant dialogue when he finds out is he bursts in a rage of how could you have not told me, and he, while Aisha tries to keep silent, he takes the broom and throws it around in a display of aggression and dominance. His constant dialogue is repetitive, and it's kya karo and kya kiya. And this dialogue basically displays how honor is once again placed on the woman. And in these terms, even when the woman has been through violence, in light of Sadaf Ahmed's theory of how the mothers keep up a certain structural honor in the community and in their personal family, we can infer that Salim's desperation and anxiety as a result of finding out that his mother is who he calls a kafir now, um, is seen as a dishonor to him. So it's a halting theme, and the questioning of her honor prevails in this constant light. That why is it that these mothers who even have imbued a series of violence are now still are holding the burden of family honor, in essence to uphold the structure, but also the son's respect, even though the father is not in the picture, reiterating the fact that she is now a widow. Looking towards this on a deeper scale, we can see that she represents the women minority during partition. When we see parceling honor, it becomes an area of, now the dialogues in the scene are, while limited, it is the silent moments that are depicted through the contrast in color and basically Aisha's expressions, through which the audience can infer the deeper themes and meanings present in her current reality as we also see her past. Then we move on to the concept of migration from Viru to Aisha. So after the fight with her son, we see that Aisha isolates herself. Throughout the movie, there is a constant theme of dislocation and working repetitively on autopilot for Aisha as a result of the trauma she endured during partition, that she is usually in isolation. So, given the scene that I have chosen and going further deeper into the movie, her isolation increases, particularly after the falling action and climax. So, we see that that we knew her as the identity of Aisha. We are shown how she was Viru once during the brink of partition, and she had to jump. Her father was once again placing honor on her and she was also the representative of honor for the Sikh community, that in an effort to not be violated and raped by the Muslim army and the mobs that were coming, her father was making her jump into a well, which is symbolic to which becomes symbolic to Aisha's transience as an individual. Um, Yasmin Jaswani talks about migration in terms of violence, but I will use that context to highlight how Aisha's migration did not change in terms of geography or topography. The same house in which she was Viru, she became Aisha after she was raped and abducted by a Muslim man. However, instead, she had to change her identity. So the migration is marked by her change in garments of religious identity, which essentially leaves her as a middle-aged woman confused in a certain reality as well. So her past, and she reaches, no, so basically there comes another scene in which Aisha reconnects with her brother Jaswant at the well, where her father wanted her to jump in because he felt it was better to die than be dishonored in the terms of rape. And so when she's talking to Jaswant, the constant dialogue is that her brother is trying to convince her to come back to India so his father can finally have peace in seeing his daughter is okay. But the constant repetition that Aisha states in her dialogue is, what will he do when he sees me alive and now a Muslim? How will he go to his Sikh heaven, and what heaven is there for me, a Sikh heaven or a Muslim heaven? Now, her question interrogates the patriarchal ownership of women's body within religious groups. She sees herself as both Muslim and Sikh and none of the two, whereas the patriarchal agents in the film, the father, the brother, and the son, attempt to fix Aisha throughout within their religious communities. However, she refuses. So, the concept of heaven highlights how it foreshadows how Aisha's upcoming reality is very abstract, dire, but also one full of confusion as a result of her trauma. In some ways, and then we comment on how what finally made Aisha from Viru to Aisha was how her husband occupies a different position. Now, the abductor who decides to marry, he shows in ways in which individual actors responded to the political upheavals of partition. It is suggested by using Basin and Menon's theory that among different things that happened to women post-partition, many women were also married to their abductors. As a result, we can conclude that Aisha's representation and her stereotype in this political climate is actually consistent with history and what actually happened to minority women during partition, that many of their abductors and rapists married them in a state of violence and power. It is emblematic to the genesis of her new identity as well, which was enforced by men. We see that Aisha has no autonomy or agency. Her identity is constantly being parceled, and she has to suffer a mental migration back and forth to who she was and how she is now. And it has always been at the hands of men. Miss, next slide, please. Miss, did you? Oh no, this one.
Is this the wrong one?
No. I thought you wrote the comment that I will get 0 in presentation. I freaked out for a second.
Not you. I'm not giving any comments to you at all as yet.
Okay, so
I was talking to Misha. The comments are not for you.
Oh, okay, thank you. One thing we also see is that Aisha's rape scene has not been graphically exploited and visually and stylistically shown to the audience. However, it was inferred. But the theory is still prominent there that in her rape scene, her rape is basically used as it is emblematic to not only the passing of her identity and how she has been dishonored by the Sikh community, but her marrying her rapist is a way to garment herself with a new layer of honor due to what patriarchy wants her to be. It is also used as a functional tool to not only add layers to the plot, but it delineates how right after her memory, we can see the Islamic fundamentalists raid the small village where she lives in. So it it is a pretext to her current reality. Now, The Well is a constant silent motion picture which is reiterated throughout the scene in glimpses with Aisha's expression of being somber in isolation. The atmosphere is just, she is nestled on the floor in a chiaroscuric atmosphere with extreme lighting contrast, and there is silence. The Well is often accompanied by non-diegetic sounds of murmurs of women. So we can see that this well serves as a constant symbol for concrete pain and violence, and interestingly enough, it has been cemented in the same place where Aisha was abducted, where she was raped, and then where her new life began in post-partition, the newly created Pakistan, in the same house, which was at Chakri. She refused to go to the well for 30 years until the very end, where the confrontations ensued and her eventual suicide. So we can infer that the well is coupled not only with her lack of emotion, but it does stem from the current pain, her dissociation from reality, and also her dislocation from her surroundings and identity, but it stems from the perpetual grief due to the violence and loss of partition. In conclusion, So, in conclusion, we can relate to how Khamosh Pani's representation of women, which is mainly highlighted through Aisha's character, is consistent with current day acts of how minority women are treated, with how the minority women are subjugated and marginalized in our current landscape. Recently, there was recently there was a case in where a judge nullified the free will marriage of a Hindu girl, Mehak Kumari, in 2009, and it was confirmed that she was underage when she embraced Islam, so-called, and married a Muslim man. And these forced conversions still take place in our current landscape, and we see Aisha's character as a representation of that, because even though there is no outright sovereign war that takes place, the rape and violence and the result of generational trauma within these rural communities is very consistent with our history, which still results in this. Ma'am, I think I'll just conclude with that.
Okay. Okay, nice. Nice to see you connecting rape from an old film. G, comments? Uh, uh, G, comments? Uh, Ikra? I think most of the students were discussing rapes in different TV dramas and films. So it would be interesting to see a discussion from rape, on rape from Sabiha Sumar's film. Uh, is it a 2003 film?
Yes.
Okay. G.
I explained it better in my essay. I was trying to just condense everything, but it was getting a little tough.
Okay. I think one of the students also connected rape in present place to rape in partition times, and we had discussed that briefly in one of the classes, I think in last class. And again, partition, rape, and film is connected here. So I think it's quite interesting. I generally liked the presentation. I think theoretical connections were very strong. And did you look at any literature on this film from the past?
I looked at limited literature, but mainly it was just me analyzing it in the moment and also in the whole context of the movie when I had to watch it.
Okay.
I basically tried to relate it more to some of the class discussions I had done. I did read up on more on partition to get a greater understanding. There are these two theorists I found. There was one called Borders and Boundaries Women in India's Partition. This was by Menon, Ritu, Bhasan, and Kama. As a result, since they give historical accounts as well, I could draw consistencies and parallels with how accurate it was or how it wasn't.
Okay.
It wasn't a very dense film, so there is a lot to write about and talk about, but it was just about noting it down and condensing it.
Okay. And did you connect anything from that article, migration, to this one? Because it's
I
also
used
talking about war and rape. That's a popular theme in most of the film. And then you talked about contextual realism and semiotic analysis. How would you explain contextual realism?
I use contextual realism, and basically with realism, the way I connected it was looking up history archives and seeing the consistency within the movie and the representation of a certain rural atmosphere and how the minority women had to undergo a great level of violence, and then analyzing it and drawing parallels to if it was at the same form in the film as it was represented in reality. Contextualizing was seen in the form of was analyzed in the form of the movie the film as a whole compared to the scene. So bringing about themes together with and representing them through her character as well.
Okay. All right.
And
So,
semiotic analysis was mainly there was another. The well is a huge image for her analysis, but also there are other symbols such as the locket, which contains her picture as from her past life. I didn't mention that because it would have the presentation would have gotten longer. But certain symbols through lighting, contrast, images, and the way her the way her past has been depicted, it fell into the semiotic analysis form.
okay. So, does she belong to minority community?
Yes, she does. She was initially, as I had mentioned in my second argument, she her first she was Viru, a young seeker belonging to a community of Sikhs near the same village she is currently living in, but that village was occupied due to partition, and her father was making all the women jump down the well to their eventual death as a result to preserve honor. So instead of being raped and polluted, it would not bring dishonor to her or her family.
Okay.
However, she last minute she refused and she ran away. However, but she ran into a group of Muslim men, and then it was not explicitly shown but implied that they were raped, and then she was raped, and then one of her rapists felt remorse, so he decided to marry her and made her
Okay. So,
convert.
so you are saying the rapist was a Muslim man.
Yes, the rapist was a Muslim man. This was the classic case of divide, conquer, and violence through by trying to regulate women's bodies in this atmosphere.
Okay. Okay. Very good. So,
Ma'am, I had a point. I remember when you talked about A Girl in the River, the documentary. I thought we were going to watch this. Remember, I said कि खामोश पानी थी मूवी एक and TFT की किसी क्लास ने ये ऑडिटोरियम पे लगाई थी for I think it was my second year or third year. That's when I first watched it. And I remember even then the discussion was based around rape during the time of partition. And वो मंटो के भी बारे में बहुत हुआ था because मंटो के अफसानों में बहुत इसके बारे में था ना, like the rape and how it took place in the place of women during partition, because that's not something that's highlighted a lot when we talk about partition, and that is something that happened a lot, like लेकिन उसको कभी discuss नहीं किया जाता, बहुत कम discuss किया जाता whenever we're talking about partition. So I really liked this film because it was this for the first time we saw like a film showing not like ke Musliman Hindu. They showed the fact that men, either side that they were horrible at that time. They were the worst that they could be. It didn't matter if it was a Muslim or a Hindu or a Sikh. मतलब वो सब उस टाइम अपनी गैरत का सोच रहे थे, and they were killing their women and they were raping other people's women. So there was this the position of a woman was really in a vulnerable place during partition. So I really like that this was discussed because this is something that should be discussed more.
okay. I think one point which is interesting and which Myra mentioned also is that Sikhs wanting their women to jump into the well, and
Huh.
I think there are perhaps many stories that actually
Yeah.
refer to this, that Sikhs were actually killing their women, stabbing them or killing them, and it's a historical fact. So right now, what I found very interesting here, that when we talk about honor, most of the times we are talking about honor in Pakistani context or Muslim context. And what keeps on emerging and re-emerging is the concept of honor that Sikhs have. Like Sikh community is probably far more into honor of women or into protecting honor of their women than
Hmm.
perhaps any other community in the subcontinent. What about
Hmm.
Padmavat? Does that represent a Sikh community or a Hindu community?
No, ma'am, that's Rajput. That's different. That's a Hindu
Yeah,
community.
that's different.
And I think many of Rajput are Sikhs also, so there may be an overlap somewhere. So
Yeah,
I'm just wondering that it's not honor is not something that we as Pakistanis feel is a Muslim domain or anything. Honor does not have
hmm.
any religion. The concepts of honor do not have any religion
Yeah, it's not
because
bound to that.
this theme keeps on appearing and reappearing that Sikhs were wanting their women to jump into wells, and they were also
Hmm.
killing their women in various ways when at the time of war or during partition. Apart from that, when we look at Razia Bhatt's novel Bano, Banu is raped by a Sikh in Razia Bhatt's novel, and I'm not saying that it's it was only people of one religion who were attacking women of the people of other religion. You
Hmm.
yourself mentioned, Ikra mentioned just now that eh, people were behaving so strongly against each other and against
Hmm.
uh, people and women of other religion that they were just attacking without thinking. So I can
Hmm.
understand that these different novels actually point to attacks on women by men of different communities around the time of partition, including this one. But honor seems like something which is important to perhaps people of all religion in the subcontinent, right? So
Exactly.
it's more a regional kind of thing it's than it belongs to any religious minority or a religious majority at all. Uh,
Yeah.
as
Ma'am,
for
this was also discussed in the Pakistani drama Dastan. It's
okay,
a pretty old drama, but I really want to do it, but it was really old, like so I couldn't because हमने 2019 का choose करना था ना, तो उसमें भी the entire story was about partition and what a girl goes through during partition. Like it was really beautifully depicted.
okay.
This there's
Uh,
also another
w-
important fact to add, which was basically Aisha's layers of honor, where it was emblematic in the sense that these garments were strippen and adorned on top of her by different men according to tracing her journey from being forced to convert as a Sikh girl to once again a Muslim woman at the hands of men. Because after she was raped, she was considered polluted, and the only way to restore that honor was to make her Muslim and marry her. So that was also a point to show that she was both representative of being honored and dishonored simultaneously.
Right. I think what you said just now is again very interesting because Razia Bhatt says the same thing about Bano when she was I think when she was in hands of Sikh communities somewhere near border, somewhere in India before partition, and I think she was with them for a few months or a couple of years or so, and this Sikh guy who had abducted her wanted to marry her, right? And people of his community said to him that she is polluted with Islam and she should be converted to Sikhism for purity before you marry her. So I think that is again very interesting that you think that religion or belonging becomes part of being polluted, right? Because
Yeah.
I think it is again what you said just now is connected to one of the themes in Razia Bhatt's novel. And when you talk about Bano is a character who is raped several times, first by Hindus, then by Sikhs, and last in Lahore by a Muslim man in whose house she was working as a maid. to make her living. So I think it's very interesting because Razia but basically did not spare people of any religion or men of any religion as rapists, because she used the three kinds of men who belong to three types of religion as rapists of the main character. Probably Shamimara wanted to make a film on this novel, but it was during Zia's era, and she could not make it because the theme was extremely controversial. Because you're not showing just Hindus as rapists; you are also showing Sikhs and Muslims as rapists. And Razia Bhatt's novel actually did that. Uh, so I think
It's
it is.
also
Ji.
Mara, it's also the concept of the fabric of community and how it is constantly dictating how individuals they thread their lives together through community and being accepted in a certain communal atmosphere. So with Biru, she went from one community to another, but the climax in her late 32 years after partition was when her identity as once being Sikh came out, and then she was slowly being ostracized, which furthered her into isolation. So there's also that cons. Yes.
Ji.
No, I had finished my
Okay,
concept.
I thought somebody else was trying to add something. Yeah, I think it's extremely interesting because Manto's novel was probably, or the story, whatever, so that story is probably named Kholdo, and it is about a woman who has been raped many times, and finally, when his father finds her and goes to meet her, and she is lying in a room in a very bad condition. And when father enters the room, he asks people in that room, uh, he's actually saying khidki khol do, but the girl starts screaming because she has been raped so many times that she feels that somebody again is asking her to unzip herself, or so khol do becomes a very bad kind of
Yeah,
uh,
well, she's actually a girl, not even a woman. She's shown to be very young, like a kid almost.
Yes, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a young woman. That's what I meant. That girls
Yeah.
were mostly abducted and raped, and partition was a very bad time for, I think, gender, and women become focus of these attacks. Uh, okay, so good. G. Any other comment? Anyone on any of these themes? I think there was one more thing in your presentation. Uh, I'm just trying to recall what it was because I perhaps did not make a note of it at the time. Uh, but you do mention, like it's very complicated for these women. Their identity becomes very complicated. I think we still need to find out when this first honor killing incident happened after partition, uh, because I think that's important. Um, the, it's not moving on to next page, and I keep remembering and forgetting the point. Right?
Miss, was it about if it's related to identity, the concept I raised about how heaven seems abstract when she is tied between two identities?
You mean Sikh identity and
Yeah,
Muslim identity?
because
No, the
their
comment.
direct
Yeah. Um,
so
okay. You also use the word mirror here, right? So I think mirroring is also an important concept in many ways, because you are actually mirroring facts, and people from different communities actually can see what is happening here. These two dialogues I did not, I just want you to repeat what you said about these dialogues. Kya kara or
Kya
they.
Kara was basically the it depicts Celine, her son's vexation when he finds out her past identity because he sees that as her bringing dishonor to his current family and his predicament, especially since he has joined the Islamic radical movement with the radicals. So, and this becomes an area of hostility between mother and son because he then tries to force her to publicly announce herself as Muslim and accept, but she refuses and she stays silent. Te apai ko te jana pega is the ko is basically the well, and it signify, and the well I had discussed in the later slides as how it was symbolic to her journey as both Viru and Aisha. So
Okay,
this
so
is
is she raped twice in this film?
no, she is raped once as a young girl, and then she marries her abductor. She does, even though she lives in the same house where she used to live with her family, uh, that home has been refigured after her abduction and partition. But the well is something that stays concrete throughout. She, however, she refuses for 30 years to go near the well to catch water until this line, and this happened after her brother came and she was being ostracized, that she adapted to the circumstances and she revisited the well multiple times.
Okay, all right. So I think it was probably Noor who mentioned that connection with scriptures, because I think you did not mention scripture in your presentation, right? So
No,
Noor,
I mentioned that she had both scriptures as a reflection of her identity crisis.
okay. Yeah, I think Noor referred to one of the readings from Google Classroom. I think one of the abstracts was actually focusing on how religions have
Yes, miss.
misogynistic response to women. And I think Noor mentioned it in her presentation. Right now, because you are mentioning different religions, so again, it's an interesting connection between religion and the attacker and the attacked. So I think it's quite interesting how these different films are using religion as background of the rapists. Because the theme is there all the time, though it's not focused upon, but it is mentioned. And I think it's very interesting right now that at least feminists are looking at this connection between religion and misogyny, apart from other things.
Yes, do you want to share the abstract that I was talking about? Because that has very clear mention of rape and how um, it's justified using religion. Not justified, but I can, matlab, I'm misquoting it. I think I can share the abstract if you
Uh,
want.
yeah, I think yes, it's there in Google Classroom, and Myra probably was present in that class as well. So
Yes.
Myra can look at it, and we can go to that one as well. If you want to share, you can share it. Uh,
Okay.
G. G. So I think this connection is very important, and uh, perhaps it was uh, Zarish's article that mentioned Maria Maron, right? Uh, Zarish mentioned Maria Maron in her present. So Maria Maron is publishing two books on misogyny. I think this abstract, which I had posted in Google Classroom, this particular paper may be in that book. I would try finding out. I think that article on the connection between misogyny and scriptures may already be published because she was sending it to publishers in May this year. So I'll try finding out if that one is also published. Ji. Noor, are you sharing it?
Yes, मिस मैं ज़रा देख रही हूँ कहाँ पे मैं बस
Okay.
देख रही हूँ it's by Deborah Mason.
Okay.
very short abstract. Wait. Yes, this one. मिल गया बस मैं share कर रही हूँ.
Okay, please do.
This is the one. I'll just read it out if that's okay.
That's okay.
Nearly half of the world's population say they belong to an Abrahamic faith: Christianity, Islam, or Judaism. It's not surprising that these three faiths, with some shared prophets and sacred stories, include believers who hold not just sexist but overtly misogynistic views. The interpretations by some followers of scriptures that permit the raping of women prisoners, blame women for a fall from perfection, view biological conditions of menstruation and childbirth as dirty, and exclude women from elite sacred rites have stoked misogyny throughout the millennia. This presentation traces the ancient and global religious roots of misogyny from ancient Greek and Roman times to the modern era. For example, the ancient Greeks had no word for heroine, using historical and scriptural analysis. Furthermore, the chapter introduces the topic of how media, interpreted broadly, was used to spread and enforce such religious-based misogyny. Miss, the chapter they're talking about is chapter 10, जिसके ऊपर ये basically this topic is covered, of from the book Misogyny Through the Millennia.
Okay. Yeah, I think I really liked it because I think it's very important that feminists are actually touching upon all these things, all these issues, because I think in the past world, nobody would even imagine. Sorry about that. I was saying that in the past, nobody would even imagine that religion could be misogynistic, or religions were treating women with a lot of misogyny or hatred. Thus, I feel that this study is extremely important, and I am definitely interested in reading about it. So that's why I said that I'll try finding out if this book is already published.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I think 2019 में publish हुई है या 2019 में I think. हाँ, so I think
around this time, because this abstract is from 2018 conference, so I think that yeah, 2018 or 19 conference basically, so it makes sense. So G, any comment, because Myra was in Myra's presentation, though this was not the main theme, but religion did appear, and it did appear religion of the rapist, and he married the woman out of remorse. That is another thing. So I was wondering if remorse or marriage becomes purity to the woman, because you were saying the son was very upset and he wanted his mother to announce that she has become Muslim. So that's again is very complicated, because I don't know if it will make it dangerous for her, because she will be looked at uh, as first a Sikh, then a Muslim. And I think this kind of misogyny please keeps on happening, because we are reading so many articles in daily newspapers about conversion to Islam uh, of minority women uh, through marriage. And many women, I think we have these news are still printed off and on, that these women are abducted, they are converted to Islam, and they marry their abductors, or at least their families are saying they have been abducted. So there is a lot of confusion about these kind of stories, and the connection between religion and forced acceptance of religion, and abduction and marriages of women, especially women of minorities. Are you ready to present, Misha? It's important.
Okay, so Miss, I'm going to discuss the movie Verna by Shoaib Mansoor, and why Verna. So, because I personally feel that the film kind of trivializes the aftermath of rape. So by trivializing aftermath of rape, I feel that it does get a few things right. For example, by getting a few things right, I mean that it kind of breaks a stereotype about woman who gets raped, like she doesn't hide away, or she doesn't let it become a stigma on her life, and a kind of full stop for her living. But it gets the aftermath of rape all wrong. Also, by saying that it gets the aftermath of rape all wrong, I don't think by going back to her rapist to be raped again is kind of when you listen to documentaries, or when you talk about the experiences of rape victims. Um, it, it's it's psychologically and it's physically, it's not possible that a woman would go back to her rapist. And it makes the audience feel that, oh, maybe it's not a big deal that she got kidnapped and then she got raped because she went back to her rapist. And it kind of makes you feel that, or maybe she wasn't angry enough, or maybe it's not a big deal, which is wrong, because it gives out the wrong message. uh, but on the other hand, when you look at it, it was in Dawn, it was published after the movie was released, that it was a male director's fantasy female Avenger. So what it makes me feel is that, in the first place, when a man produces a movie based on a woman's experience, I feel, how could it be very very accurate? Because I personally feel that Shoaib Mansoor kind of made a movie which he tried to create a hero out of, Myra Khan's character. But then the very the things that are very crucial, the critical things, he got them wrong. Like I just mentioned, that going back to a rapist. And then the इस मूवी में बस आई फील कि सिर्फ एक फेमिनिन पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से चीज़ें गलत नहीं है, एक मैस्कुलिन point of view se bhi, there's a lot of problematic things. For example, the toxic masculinity that this movie kind of puts forward. For example, अब जिस तरह उसका husband होता है, एमी जिसका नाम होता है जिस तरह उसको बुलाते हैं, वो मिस उसको किस तरह का एक वो दिखाया हुआ है कि his wife gets raped, और वो his reaction and all that, और फिर उसको बार बार जो है वो she's trying to tell him, और उसके ऊपर फोर्स करने की कोशिश कर रही होती है कि you limp and you have a problem, मैंने तो तुमसे शादी की but you limp. So बस ये भी एक toxic masculinity की बात है कि उसको बार बार बता रहे हैं that if you're not a strong man who can walk straight and who has this posture and who has power, तो अगर मैंने तुमसे शादी की है तो मैंने तुम्हारे ऊपर एहसान किया है शादी करके. So this is toxic. वो एक उन्होंने दिखाई है कि reinforcing the idea that masculinity should be वो stereotype में fit होनी चाहिए कि tall, dark, handsome, and वो sensitive दिखाया हुआ है काफी, और वो उसको एक्सेप्ट भी करता है, which is एक एंगल से if you look at it, तो मूवी में एक stereotype भी ब्रेक हुआ है कि वो eventually उसको एक्सेप्ट भी करता है, उसकी हेल्प भी करता है टू abduct the rapist, और सारा कुछ है. उन्होंने stereotype ब्रेक भी किया है, मगर उसी के ही दूसरे एंगल पर अगर आप देखें तो उन्होंने उसको टॉक्सिक मैस्कुलिनिटी में फिट भी किया हुआ है कि वो she keeps on and everybody keeps on telling her कि मैं I'm a foreign graduate and I'm this and that, और मुझे तो कोई भी लड़का मिल सकता था, but I married a man who is who limps and जो भी उसके वो उस तरह से थे. And then I've discussed कि वो this movie because वो एक मेल पर्सपेक्टिव से बनी है, so उसके वो हैं प्रॉब्लम. एंड देन फिर मैं वही बात है कि अगर आप एक दिखा रहे हैं that वो trivializing rape, that a woman is going back to her rapist, तो उसका social impact जो है वो वही होता है कि a woman, if a woman can go back to her rapist, तो फिर तो rape is only, it reduces down the act of violating a body, violating a human, to just kind of enact a very trivial physical act. You know, वो इसमें से I feel कि वो जो emotion है of being violated, और वो एक जो आपकी autonomy है, एक bodily autonomy, एक woman की, एक human की, वो उसमें से, इस मूवी में से उन्होंने छीन लिया एक तरह से, by just kind of reducing it down to just a physical act. Ma'am, can you hear me?
Gigi, we are all hearing you.
Okay, thank God. And then मैम इसमें एक और भी जो आफ्टरमैथ ऑफ रेप का, इसमें एक और भी पॉइंट था कि जो अगर आप इसको एज अ पॉजिटिव उस पे दूसरे फ्लिप साइड पे भी देखें तो many women do go through this kind of defense mechanism where they kind of try to the anger and hostility से वो act करती हैं instead of you know, hiding away and instead of crying and pitying themselves. So इसमें थोड़ा सा वो भी show किया हुआ है एक element, psychological element के every woman does not experience rape kind of the same way. This is I'll be referencing it in the किया हुआ है उसमें पेपर में reference किया हुआ है कि ये कौन सी study है, but it kind of वो उसको भी थोड़ा सा the director kind of and the writer plays around with that also कि some women kind of go numb, emotionally numb, and then they have anger and they have hostility, और वो उसको किसी ना किसी तरीके से they kind of exhibited उसको निकाल अपने मतलब mind में से they kind of act the way कि वो उसको show करें, और उसको तो इसमें वो भी थोड़ा सा a part of it is kind of shown कि वो जिस तरह उसको पहले जाती है, फिर she tries to prove कि you know he did rape me in the court, और फिर उसके बाद उसको abduct करती है, और वो उसको she doesn't let it slow her down. वो एक पार्ट जो है वो it's the flip side of the fact कि वो इन्होंने trivialize किया हुआ है the aftermath, but also एक वो साइकोलॉजिकल एस्पेक्ट भी उसमें ऐड किया हुआ है कि यू नो एवरी वुमन इज नॉट द सेम एज वो जिस तरह डॉन के आर्टिकल में उन्होंने बताया कि you know a male directed kind of you know tries to create a hero for women, and I think it is a movie that was kind of made for female audience because you know to kind of they can kind of connect with with probably not everyone, but the anger she feels, and you know how she what she goes through. Where kind of this movie gets a few things wrong, it gets the politics of rape and politics of you know the politics of rape right. For example, वो उसका बेटा होता है, गवर्नर का बेटा होता है, और एंड वो इलेक्शंस भी उनके आ रहे होते हैं, एंड दे हैव अ लॉट ऑफ पावर, जिस तरह वो दिखाया होता है कि वो सिर्फ जाके उसको ट्रैफिक के लिए शी सेज यू नो दैट यू ब्लॉक द ट्रैफिक एंड यू नो वी वेटिंग हियर सिंस अ लॉन्ग टाइम, और वो इतनी सी बात के ऊपर वो ही फील सो एंगर्ड एंड दे फील सो ह्यूमन. फॉर एग्जांपल एक नॉर्मल किसी ट्राइबल एरिया का कोई ऐसा बंदा हो जो इतना वेल्दी ना हो और इन्फ्लुएंशियल भी ना हो, तो प्रॉबेबली उसको वो एज ना हो जो उसको है, जो कि एक सरदार फैमिली से है और उसके पास एक बैकग्राउंड ऑफ प्रिविलेज है. ठीक है, मेल हो गया, फिर सरदार फैमिली का हो गया, उसके बाद पॉलिटिक्स में भी हो गया. सो इट्स काइंड ऑफ इट्स उसको एज ओवर एज है, यू नो, यू गेट इट. जिस तरह हम व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट के
G, is it clear or you want to ask further questions?
Can you give an example of this from the film?
Ji Meera, do you find the scene somewhere here, or should I go to the film?
मिस आवाज कट
Ikra asked for an example from the film.
एंड मिस वो um, there are several instances जहाँ पे वो उन्होंने ये दिखाया हुआ है. For example, when she first goes to his house, तो उधर उनके servants होते हैं 2-3 and the way they talk about his family. Exactly अब मुझे पता नहीं है मिस वो मूवी के किस पॉइंट पे कितने आवर्स के बाद वो उसमें आता है, बट वो जब जाती है उसके घर पहली दफा तो देर आर वो डाइनिंग टेबल पे आई थिंक बैठे होते हैं और देर आर उसके सर्वेंट्स होते हैं हु टॉकिंग अबाउट यू नो कि वो कितने मतलब उनके लिए कितने इम्पोर्टेंट हैं और वो अपने एरिया के कितने वो हैं. और फिर तब भी जब वो उसको जाके ट्रैफिक के टाइम पे कहती है तब भी वो है कि इस लड़की की कैसे मतलब वो एक हिम्मत है कि ये आके मतलब मेरे जैसे एक इतने हाईली वो रिस्पेक्टेड और उस बंदे को जो है वो कुछ बोले या कुछ कहे. एंड देन उसका सन जो उसका बेटा होता है जो उसको बेसिकली अबडक्ट करते हैं वो भी फिल्म में जब एक्सप्लेन कर रहा होता है आई थिंक उसी को ही कर रहा होता है, माहिरा खान की कैरेक्टर को कर रहा होता है कि you know why did I abduct you. तो वो यही कह रहा होता है कि how is it even possible कि you know हम जैसे privileged और अपने मतलब वो लोगों को जो है वो we can let just
Ma'am, this is
you
not
know
the
a
term.
mere woman, you know powerless woman can come and just say anything to us. और वो the way they dress up also उसका जो गवर्नर होता है वो जो अपनी वो पहन के वो जिस तरह टर्बन सी वो पर होता है वो भी इज अ साइन एंड इज अ सिंबल ऑफ पावर अपना वो जो उनका एरिया होता है उसमें.
Okay, I think turban was in the trailer. He was wearing turban in the trailer. I tried looking for it here, but I think it's very difficult to find it in a 2.5 hour long film. Ji Ikra, I thought you were trying to say something. Ji.
No, I understood what she was saying. I was just saying that she was talking about the privilege of the men in the film and the fact that the discrimination that the girl had to go through because she was a woman and
तो the
obviously the
movie
fact
पूरी movie is based on that.
I haven't
Right.
seen the film, which is why I was asking you. But yeah, I understand.
Okay. Uh, okay. I thought it was interesting that this presentation and the previous presentation was in a way involving nation, because we are talking about a politician's son, right? और आई थिंक के ट्रेलर में तो वो डायलॉग मौजूद था जिसमें वो कहता है कि माय फादर इज गोइंग टू बी द नेक्स्ट पॉलिटिशियन ऑफ Pakistan. I was just wondering how they involved state in all this affair. यहाँ पे ये दो वर्ड्स लिखे हुए हैं बॉडी पॉलिटिक the people of a nation, state, or society considered collectively as an organized group of citizens. So I was just wondering कि इस फिल्म में how you can also comment on body politic uh, because the presentation on Khamosh Pani and this presentation both mentioned state or Pakistan in one way or the other. And I was just wondering how this body politic or like body of a nation becomes part of all these scenarios, whether around times of partition or other. Right? Okay, thank you, G. Any other comment by anyone? No comments. No comments on body politic.
Miss, I'd like to say something about the body politic thing. I don't know if this is relevant in terms of the presentation, but one of the very good examples of body politics is during Zia's time, and his laws for zina, that जो zina ordinance था, that was one way in which women's bodies were somehow being controlled by the state, and it really such a law did not offer women the space to come out enough with their rape, and that they could file a case. And some were also some many, in fact around 2000 women were unjustly imprisoned on the basis that they could not prove the rape that had occurred, and hence many were unjustly imprisoned on the basis of the fact that it was zina. So I'm assuming that could be an example of the body politic thing.
Yeah,
And
it's
yes, I think it is related to the movie Verna also, because उन्होंने दिखाया है कि almost I think more than half of the movie उन्होंने उसको अपना रेप प्रूव करते हुए दिखाया है कि किसी तरह मैं प्रूव कर लूं, और वो बट द वो ये जो influence उसका यूज करके they change reports several times और क्या क्या कुछ करते हैं, but because वो उसके पास कोई वो नहीं होता, जिस तरह ये जो आपने मेंशन किया जो laws जो बने थे कि you need क्या कहते हैं a witness to a witness to prove कि you were raped. So obviously I don't understand this law generally, but but it's there. तो वो उसके पास तो obviously there was no witness, so she couldn't prove in court कि I was raped. तो she had to take the other way, उसको abduct करती है, वो जितना भी वो surreal लगे but वो करती है और उसको छोड़ देती है उधर बेसमेंट में जो भी, but she was unable to do it despite कि उसके पास reports भी होती हैं, despite the fact that she goes back to her rapist to prove कि through the test कि मैं I that मैं सही कह रही हूँ, I have the report, ये है, ये proven है, fact है, but वो नहीं कर सकती because उसके पास इसी law की वजह से, because उसके पास witness नहीं होता. So it is very very much related to the movie.
Yes, I think what Nimra said about the Zina ordinance is definitely connected to this situation in this film. Right, very nicely connected, Nimra. Gee, I think.
Ma'am, I'd like to offer like one last criticism. I hope this is not taken out of context, yeah, a bit personally, but I'd simply like to point out that in any presentation, if you're presenting, I think it's common courtesy to make sure that everything is organized, because the audience is there very respectfully to listen to something that you have to say. And I think our class has been more than accepting and also very involved in the hard work that other people have done. So if there's one thing that could be improved is making sure that everything is done prior to the class, so that if people are coming and taking out time and staying within a class to listen to a certain presentation, so it should have been organized pehle se. I hope this is not taken like out of context or
No. It's very
personally. This is
relevant
one
because
thing.
it is very relevant, Nimra. जी आमना.
मैम हम तो स्टूडेंट्स हैं तो हम तो कर सकते हैं, बट एज अ टीचर आई थिंक इट्स रियली वी कांट मतलब कि टेक आवर टीचर्स फॉर ग्रांटेड or make them wait. I mean, I'm sorry if I'm hurting anyone, but I'm just trying to, because what Nimra said, I think it's really important because
Yes, it is. It is
there's so many people, so also
important.
because teacher they're also giving us so much of their time, तो इस वजह से वो फिर अच्छा नहीं लगता that the teacher is continuously asking कि क्या हुआ है क्या नहीं हुआ, और वो जो है because it's not the teacher's responsibility to make sure कि कौन present करे, because as students it's our responsibility to make sure कि सब हुआ है, but थोड़ा teachers का भी ख्याल रखना चाहिए. I'm sorry, but
Besides that, it's very
I
unfair that
definitely
we
agree.
had to do this last week and we were all prepared. मतलब मैंने तो एक हफ्ते पहले सब कुछ prepare करके रखा हुआ था, and it's not fair for us to watch other people do it last minute. It's not fair. It's really not fair, and it should show in the grading because हमने बहुत मेहनत की है. And I don't even care if it comes out as
And
rude because I worked
I
really hard on my
I think
presentation.
I agree with that, and I genuinely understand that, and I do agree with that. And also the fact that we're university students, I think it's expected for us to find alternatives soon, and there are very much available. And the most part, we're expected to work independently to find better solutions. So if that is something that can be worked on, because I think that as adults we can take more responsibility to perform better then.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I think it was we were all of us were waiting, so it was important that nobody had to wait for anyone, and it was also very important that we could finish all presentations in 2 sessions. Sometimes it's important not to have a third session for the presentations because people should know, and all presenters should know that even international conferences and Pakistani conferences have fixed times, which means their dates do not change. And in this case, because we were also grading, and that's the only reason I did ask that students do present. Today is the last chance to present, because I didn't want anyone to lose 10% marks for not presenting. And it's only respectful towards the whole group of attendants, whether that be teacher or students, that people do come and present their presentations. And if people are not coming, as I said earlier, I wanted to do something different today because I thought I could give perhaps feedback on work that people had submitted. And it was essential that we have presentations because I didn't want people to lose 10% marks right away. And yes, I have given 20% marks to presentations in my classes in the past, which means that people who do not present lose 20% marks right away, which turns out very bad for them eventually. Anyways, I think it was great to hear all the presentations. Some presentations were really excellent, I think. It was extremely nice to see that most of the people took interest in similar topics, and still all the papers were very different from each other. And Misha, though presented last, and when she started presenting, I was wondering if her presentation will be different from another presentation that we had on Verna, and I was glad to know that this presentation was different from other presentation. And I think the discussion was good. Misha, when you write your final paper, I would say that try making stronger theoretical connections. Unfortunately, we could not see your presentation, and I think your discussion was very good. So it's important that people can see what academic. What kind of past research you are using for discussion. Okay, so very nice session. I want to thank
Okay,
you.
Miss. Thank you.
I want to thank all of you for being here today and for being there for all the sessions. And I think that most of the papers uh, that we heard today were really great. And I'm generally very happy, and I think that the class did very well. Most of the students did well during this class, and I look forward to reading your papers. Okay.
मैम
In जी
मेरा क्वेश्चन है फाइनल के लिए
जी जी अरीबा.
मैम हम अपना मिड टर्म को एक्सटेंड कर सकते हैं
मिड टर्म डेफिनेटली एक्सटेंड कर सकते हैं, बट टेल मी कि आपका जैसे मर्दानी में वन वाज द प्रेजेंट फिल्म एंड वन वाज द पास्ट फिल्म, सो आई थिंक when uh, who presented on Sabiha Sumar's film? Uh, was that uh, Khamosh Pani who presented on it? Uh,
Miss
Gigi
Myra.
Myra. Myra.
Yes.
So when she started presenting on a past film, I was just wondering about, like what new things I would hear. But I think there were some very nice uh, connections because she was talking about rape from a past film. And I have said in Google Classroom that try looking at something new. So I would just see because if you have some old film, at least try discussing with me uh, how how you will make it a new kind of research. For example, finding rape in this past film was useful, and discussing rape in this past film was useful. Otherwise, I would have continued wondering, like if it was a new paper. So it's sometimes important to find a new angle in that work. Just carefully read your midterm. Sorry, not your midterm, your final question paper. And I think that final question paper includes questions from midterm as well. So there shouldn't be a problem if you find a similar question from midterm in the final one. Uh, if you don't find it there, uh, at least send me a message and speak to me about it. I think we can speak on Zoom or we can speak on phone at least,
Okay, ma'am.
right?
Okay,
So,
thank you.
right. Let me look at this question
Also,
paper.
ma'am, I had a question. um you know how आपने मिड टर्म के लिए भी बोला था कि 2019 की फिल्म होनी चाहिए, फिल्म या ड्रामा होना चाहिए, लेकिन a lot of people like worked on films that were old and dramas that were older, like way older than 2019. So I didn't know we were allowed to do that. So can we do that for
No, no, no. Basically, you were not allowed to do that, but I did not want to interrupt in presentations, right? So you were not allowed to do that, and that's why I just keep wondering. I think that's why I said that Mardani had a past film and a present film, so that was fine, because
No, you
uh,
know, when you're comparing,
because
that's fine. But there are a
yeah.
lot of people that only had just one old film or one old drama. So, matlab, because there's a lot of there are a lot of gems that were made in the past, and if you're allowed, then I would want to work as well. That's why I wanted to ask.
I would say try writing on a new one.
Okay.
And
Okay.
if is your midterm question here, and most of you have actually presented well on new films as well. So I think there is no harm continuing with the new
Yeah.
films.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Ma'am, I just wanted to say that you mentioned earlier how all of us we did a great job at presenting and giving different topics and presenting in that way. I wanted to say that that was because you actually introduced us to great readings and you showed us a lot of new material, which is why we could present in a very unique and in a new the new perspective. So it was thanks to you, and you've been a great teacher, and we had a lot of fun in this class. It was very
Okay.
informative.
Yes, this course was very informative. It was far, like by far the most informative course I've taken in BNU, and the readings were
Yeah,
great actually. I loved
especially
the
in the
readings.
department of TFT. I mean, I it's very it was very informative. It was great. A lot of research.
All right, nice to know. I'm happy because I think I personally think that psychology and DLA do a lot of work and they make students work hard. So I think it was good to have DLA and psychology students in this class because they were doing a lot of work and they were bringing in their own new dimension to the readings that we were discussing. So I think it was wonderful. I think one reason that you all did well because you were from different departments also. and you were taking a lot of interest in women and media topics.
Right.
Okay, so all right. So should we close the session then? And I look forward to reading your final papers.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
ma'am.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Miss. Allah Hafiz.
Thank you,
Allah
ma'am.
Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.
You, ma'am.
Allah Hafiz.
Take care.
Take care.
Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.
Hafiz.